Ice is a pretty unique ability in Bleach. Not many people actually possess it, and while I don't think it's necessarily the most powerful or useful ability in the series, there's no denying that nearly every time it shows up, it is visually spectacular. Whenever Kubo draws ice in Bleach, it's generally a sight to behold. Now, I wanted to do a wintry video, obviously, because Christmas is upon us. It is currently Christmas Eve right now. And I came up with the idea, after kind of racking my brain a little bit for a winter-themed idea, to do the top 10 Ice Zanpakuto moments in Bleach. Now, like I said a minute ago, not many characters use ice in the series, so really, if you hadn't guessed already, this is just going to be a Hitsugaya and Rukia list, essentially. But luckily, both of them had numerous moments throughout the series to really showcase their mastery of the element. Now, as this is really just a personal list, it is only my opinion, and I would absolutely love, as always, to know your lists in the comments below. I'm going to be drawing basically entirely from the canon manga for this one, but if there are moments you think I've missed out from the anime or the movies or the video games, please don't hesitate to let me know in the comments. I always love to see how closely our lists align or how vastly they differ. So without further ado, let's get on with the list. Number 10 on the list is already starting things off with a bit of a weird one, and this is actually quite a low-key Ice Zanpakuto moment. I said a minute ago that Ice is generally visually spectacular, but this one isn't really, so why is it on the list? And that's really just because I love the way Ice is applied here, and it really showcases actually how devastating this power can be when used in the right circumstances. And that's when Rukia uses Sode no Shirayuki to defeat the Arrancar Rudborn Shaylu. Now, Rudborn actually transforms into one of my favourite resurrections in the series, Arbol, which quite literally transforms him into a tree from which he then grows continuous, copious amounts of soldiers. That's a pretty neat ability. However, trees do not take well to being frozen, as we see firsthand when Rukia uses pretty much just her basic Zanpakuto abilities to kill his power dead. And that's really, really cool. It's awesome seeing Rudborn clutching his shoulder as the branches just freeze and die, and he's pretty much rendered completely helpless before even just her basic power. And I really like that. Like I said, it's quite a low-key moment. There's nothing absolutely crazy going on here, but it really does show you just how dangerous an ability can be when paired up against so perfectly something it can actually defeat. The anime actually expands on this a little bit more and goes into some detail about what Rukia does to defeat Rudborn, saying that this ability is actually something called Juhaku, which basically means that she sends ice through the floor and then it goes up into Rudborn and freezes him from the ground up. And I can totally see how that works. He's obviously a tree at this point, so his roots are getting frozen. But the gist of it is, this ability is number 10 on this list because it is such a good showcase for how ice can devastate an opponent in the right circumstances. The 9th best Ice Zanpakuto moment also belongs to Rukia, and this one is low down on the list because when I read it initially in the manga, I did think it was unbelievably convenient. But that doesn't take away from how cool a showcase of ice this moment actually is, and that's when Rukia kills the 9th Espada, Aronniero Arueri, using her 3rd dance ability, Shirafune. Now, Rukia's Zanpakuto Sode no Shirayuki is well known for being considered the most beautiful Zanpakuto in all of Soul Society, and it truly is a masterwork of design on Kubo's part, being this pure, almost bone-white blade with an incredibly beautiful flowing ribbon behind it. However, this moment with Shirafune really shows us the almost symbiotic relationship Rukia has with ice. Her blade has been smashed to pieces by Aronniero, and she is impaled on Kayen's Nejibana trident and held loftily above him, as he believes that he has won without a shadow of a doubt. Very, very unfortunately for him, however, he is holding Rukia just close enough to his head where she can hold up the broken blade and then reform it straight through the Espada's brain. Again, like I said, it's very convenient, but it's also really cool in showcasing the versatility of ice. Basically, Rukia is able to just completely rebuild it to become a pure blade of ice itself, something that's actually echoed much later on in the series when Rukia uses her Bankai, Haka no Togame, which then becomes a pure transparent blade of ice. But here it's just really nice seeing her utilising her abilities to rebuild her sword, and she just happens to kill an Espada at the exact same time. Number 8 on the list is our first ever moment for Toshiro Hitsugaya, and this is actually when he defeats the former 6th Espada, Lupi Antenor, using an ability called Sennen Hyodo. Now, Sennen Hyodo has always really stood out to me as far as Hyorinmaru's abilities go, and that's saying something because that Zanpakuto has a lot of powers. Remember, Hitsugaya is a character who gets a ton of exposure throughout Bleach, and basically seems to invent abilities on the fly to suit the situation, but there's something about Sennen Hyodo which just not only looks really awesome, but I love the execution as well. Lupi thinks he's defeated Hitsugaya, and in his arrogance he leaves the captain alone to face off against other Shinigami, giving Hitsugaya the time he needs to create this power. And it basically summons massive bars of ice that then lock and imprison Lupi inside this cage, which then closes in on him. It's really, really great looking. I think visually it is splendid to see, and I love the way Hitsugaya quite literally locks the cage with his Zanpakuto afterwards. It's really great. And actually, it seems to me to have some kind of resemblance to Yamamoto's Enetsu Jigoku ability that he uses later on, obviously on a considerably smaller and icier scale. But they do seem to resemble each other to some degree, showcasing, I think, the power that Hyorinmaru actually has. The reason this isn't higher up on the list is because this is a fantastic example of Ice looking cool but failing to follow through. Despite imprisoning Lupi in this power, he doesn't actually die, and he manages to break out of it later on when he escapes anyway. I think it's maybe fair to say that Sennen Hyodo was perhaps never intended to be a truly offensive ability, but regardless it still is a little disappointing, but it does look fantastic all the same. For the 7th best Ice Zanpakuto moment, we must travel all the way to the 1000-Year Blood War arc, when Hitsugaya regains his stolen Bankai from the Sternritter Kangdu. Now, this is a really great moment for Hitsugaya in general when he gets Daigoren Hyorinmaru back and then defeats Kang in basically one hit. But what's really cool about this moment is when his Bankai actually undergoes hollowification. Hitsugaya gets a pretty nice looking ice hollow mask covering his eye, and a crest of ice forms where he was once wounded, again showcasing just how versatile ice can actually be. It's also undeniably great seeing the monstrous form of Hyorinmaru appearing behind Hitsugaya once he's hollowified his Bankai, and even the way he defeats Kang is actually pretty visually nice. Simply by seemingly moving his sword upwards, he imprisons Kang in a massive cross of ice. And now, I'm not the world's biggest Hitsugaya fan, but even I have to admit that I love his burn that he says to Kang here, when he says, "I'm really sorry I couldn't make it a pentagram for you." That's pretty cold. The 6th best Ice Zanpakuto moment on our list goes right back to the start of the Arrancar arc, when we finally get to see Rukia's Shinigami powers return to her properly after the Soul Society arc. And this is when we finally get to see Sode no Shirayuki for the first time in all of its splendour, and she goes up against an Arrancar named D-Roy, who she happens to just completely one-shot. Now, Grimmjow and his Fraction have invaded Karakura town, and Rukia comes up against this enemy who looks like might cause her a bit of trouble, but Kubo clearly wanted to go hard for Rukia's first ever showing, and it's really quite impressive, and honestly one of my favourite abilities of hers. And that's the ability Skishiro, which actually is her first dance. When she uses this ability, it creates a ring of ice on the ground beneath D-Roy, and he thinks that by leaping up into the sky he can escape its range. However, Rukia reveals to him that actually Skishiro's range is not just the ground, but it's everything within its domain, and that's a vertical column of ice, and D-Roy is frozen to the bone and killed in one hit. And it's honestly really great to see Rukia having such a deft command of her Zanpakuto even after not having her abilities for a little while, and she really does show just how devastating ice can actually be. I do feel like poor old D-Roy did get a bit of a short straw here going up against Rukia, especially at this moment in the story, but Kubo clearly wanted to do her justice the first time she revealed her Zanpakuto's ability. Entering the top 5 now, and the 5th best Ice Zanpakuto moment is not some crazy Bankai or even some ridiculous Shikai ability. It's actually just the first time we see a Shikai, and this is the first time Hitsugaya uses Hyorin Maru in the Soul Society arc when he's going up against Gin Ichimaru. This is back in a time where just the reveal of a Zanpakuto was an incredible event, almost earth-moving in some ways, especially when using a power that can control the weather to the extent that Hyorin Maru can. And we really get to see Hyorin Maru as a Shikai on full display here. Hitsugaya using the release command sit upon the frozen heavens and summoning the ice dragon before him, warping the weather and freezing the area around him to such an extent that even Kira is completely engulfed. It's a terrifying Shikai in a time where Shikai were still scary to witness. Obviously, beyond this point, Hyorin Maru is used to death, but here it was truly a sight to behold, really showing why Hitsugaya held the rank of captain and why Hyorin Maru was something to be feared. I think this is probably the moment where a lot of people really became fans of Hitsugaya, and it's honestly not hard to see why. Him summoning his Zanpakuto the way he does and then using it against Gin in such a powerful way will always be something that Bleach fans truly remember. Number 4 on our list is back in the 1000 Year Blood War arc, and this is when Rukia takes on Sternritter F, the Fear, as Not. Now this is a grudge match after the defeat of her brother in the first invasion, and it's here that we see the fruits of Rukia's training in the Royal Palace. Now I had my issues with this fight when it first was shown in the manga, but there's no denying that Kubo does a pretty phenomenal job of showcasing what Sode no Shirayuki is really all about, and actually how it differentiates from Hitsugaya's Hyorin Maru. Whereas his certainly seems like more of an external power, Rukia seems to internalise a lot of her cold abilities, freezing even her own body, lowering her body temperature to the point where things like her goggles shatter and a strike of her sword can freeze As Not's blood. It's honestly a really interesting and creative application of ice, turning the wielder themselves into the element. It's something slightly different from the way Hitsugaya operates, and I really enjoyed it. I still think that killing the cells of somebody who's already technically dead to make them even more dead is still pretty questionable, but the actual ability itself is really great, and seeing Sode no Shirayuki truly being able to utilise its true power was really cool to see. But the best part about this, and the reason it's number 4, is when Rukia uses her Sub-Zero power on Az. Again, it looks fantastic. Kubo draws it incredibly well, and I love the way that Rukia holds her sword up and says that she only has a few seconds worth of movement before she herself turns to ice, and actually she uses this to cut straight through As Not and freeze him to the core. It's really great to see, but again, another unfortunate example of Ice not being able to follow through with the kill. Despite freezing Az to the core with a Sub-Zero power, he later breaks out of it. Regardless, it's a great moment nonetheless. And we're at the top 3 now. These are truly the best of the best Ice Zanpakuto moments in all of Bleach. Like I said before, if you've been watching this video and you don't quite agree with my list, I'd love to see yours in the comments below, or let me know if you do agree with some of these placements. Again, I'd really like to know what you think. But number 3 on the list is Hitsugaya's adult Toshiro transformation right at the very end of the 1000 Year Blood War arc. But it's not the transformation itself that's the reason this is 3rd on the list, because truly all that happens is he becomes an older version of himself. However, it's adult Toshiro's application of ice that gets him here on the list. I absolutely love the way he's able to, almost with a flick of his wrist, flash freeze a giant like Gerard Valkyrie in a matter of seconds. It's pretty impressive, using his Shikai Hyoketsu ability to just freeze Gerard in place. Again, the artwork is absolutely stellar. Not only that, but I love the way adult Toshiro can cut through something like Gerard's Hoffnung and freeze its abilities in place completely, almost like Rukia at the start of this list with Rudborn, but here Toshiro can basically use it on anyone just to completely kill their abilities dead. So why isn't this number 1 on the list? It clearly is probably the most impressive power showing of Ice in the series, but unfortunately it's not number 1 because once again, it does not follow through. Hitsugaya flash freezes Gerard, but Gerard breaks free in a matter of seconds, which is a little bit disappointing. But regardless, this is a phenomenal showcase for the Ice Zanpakuto, and probably the strongest Hyorin Maru ever really becomes. And yet, despite that, number 2 on this list is, in my opinion, the quintessential Hyorin-Maru moment. As far as I'm concerned, this ability encompasses everything about Hyorin-Maru that makes it special, and the same goes for Hitsugaya himself. And that's when he uses his ability Hyoken Hyakuso against the 3rd Espada Harabel. When I say this ability is the quintessential Hyorin-Maru ability in the series, I truly mean it, because it encompasses everything he can do, from controlling the weather to freezing his opponents and making everything look absolutely beautiful at the same time. I love the way the sky darkens and then a hole appears that just sends all of this silky, soft-looking snow down onto the battlefield. But the moment it touches Harabel, it blossoms into this ice flower, and then it just proceeds to cover her body. She's entombed in what essentially looks like a massive Christmas tree of ice flowers, and Hitsugaya notes that when they all bloom, she will die. Again, it's a phenomenally cool power that just looks so great, and I like the way Hitsugaya was building to this throughout the entire fight as well. Up until this point, both of these characters have been trading blows in what was a fairly even matchup. Hitsugaya was trying to freeze Harabel's water, she was melting his ice and then trying to hit him with her water, at which point he would then freeze it again. However, once there is enough moisture in the air, Hitsugaya is able to use this power and truly defeat Harabel in what is, in my opinion, probably one of the most visually amazing abilities in the series, bar none, ice or otherwise. I do think Hyoten Hyakuso is a truly fantastic looking power, incredibly creative, and just a real showcase of not only Kubo's artistic ability, but just the way ice really stands out from the crowd. Even Stark looks across the fake Karakura town and sees this massive totem pole of ice and is pretty amazed by it. Again though, it's just a shame that despite Toshiro's own declaration that she will die the moment the ice flowers bloom, she actually manages to break out of it later after presumably they have all bloomed, because quite a bit of time passes between her being frozen and her getting out of it again. So that is again a bit of a letdown, but at least on the visual front, this ability is unmatched and truly actually encompasses everything that Hitsugaya is all about. However, the number 1 spot on this list, the best Ice Zanpakuto moment in all of Bleach, in my opinion, goes to Rukia's Bankai, Haka no Togame. Her battle with As Nodt has led to this moment, and she finally activates a well-earned Bankai. He is transformed into this horrific eldritch abomination, but with the urging of her brother Byakuya, Rukia finally uses this power. And it's definitely not the most elaborate or complicated ability in the series, it's basically just a massive area of effect icy sword strike, but it gets the job done. It's great seeing Rukia hold up her pearly white blade and then utilise the Bankai, which just covers the area in this massive white glow. Once the dust settles, poor old As Nodt is missing the top half of his head, his entire body just frozen right down to the bone, and we even watch as he crumbles away. Nothing more than ice at this point. And like I said, it is definitely a sword strike that Rukia does because he is missing the top of his head. But truly everything in the surrounding area is now frozen over, and this was an area that was already covered in ice, but now it really does look like it's been hit by some kind of glacial blizzard or something. But it's great as well, it's very cinematic, the way the ice kind of clears and you're left with Rukia's silhouette and then you see her herself. And I said a minute ago that Hyoten Hyakuso is the most beautiful, or one of the most beautiful abilities in the series, but Rukia's Haka no Togame is a masterpiece of design work by Kubo. She now truly encompasses this ice princess look, from her flowing snow white gown to even her purple crystalline crown that she has around her white hair. Her design is phenomenal, and I think, you know, the outpouring of fan art that came out when her Bankai was revealed was definitely indicative of that, and there's definitely reflections of Mugetsu and Tensa Zangetsu in here as well. They are two halves of the same coin in this sense, one, you know, being black, one white, and I really do think that Kubo definitely tried to do a bit of a mirror inverse image there. But Rukia's Bankai itself just looks phenomenal. I love the way her blade is now completely see-through. It is almost like a blade of ice. But perhaps my favourite thing about it, and in my opinion, what makes it the most quintessential ice power in the series. It's just the way when Byakuya tries to help her remove her Bankai and bring her body temperature back to normal, the way when he touches her ever so slightly, his hand begins to freeze over. I think it's a really compelling visual, and it really is just ice elemental powers summed up in one image. This ice princess who has just frozen her enemy to the core, but will even freeze those who dare to touch her, and I think it's just a fantastic ability. I'd have loved to have seen it again, but I think the fact that we only get to see her Bankai once truly does add to the mystique of the whole thing, and really make it that much more memorable. And that's it for my top 10 list of the best Ice Zanpakuto moments. I hope it was wintry enough for you. But like I said, as always, let me know in the comments below if you disagree with my list. I'd love to know yours as well. Do let me know what your favourite Ice Zanpakuto moments are from all of Bleach, including the anime, the movies, the games, any of that. I'd love to see it. I really hope you enjoyed, guys. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, make sure to do so, because this is the perfect place for Bleach content like this every single week. I hope those of you that celebrate Christmas have a fantastic Christmas. It's going to be a little different this year. 2020 is nearly over, but it has been a bit of a weird one. We are locked down once again here in the UK, so I'll be spending Christmas just with Jade this year. We normally go to respective parents, so it's going to be a little bit strange. But regardless, if you celebrate Christmas, I hope you have a fun and safe one. If you don't celebrate Christmas, I hope you have an amazing next couple of days regardless. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a thumbs up if you did, and I'll see you next time. Merry Christmas.